In the Why Did I Get Married films, Troy wasn't flashy and he wasn't controlling.
He didn't sweep Sheila off her feet and whisk her away. He helped her to find herself after her husband Mike left her for her close friend.
Troy didn't just love Sheila, he loved her out loud with patience and peace.
And in a world full of broken marriages, theirs survived because they fought together. Let's talk about why Sheriff Troy was such a good fit for Sheila.
I'm Heit.
And I'm Cheri.
And you've discovered Axiom Amnesia.
We want to thank all of the supporters who helped to make this video possible. If you want your name to appear alongside these contributors, make a one-time donation of $5 or more via our website at axiom.app, Cash App, or you can head on over to patreon.com/axiomamnesia to enjoy all of the benefits of becoming a monthly subscriber.
We've talked about this film many times, but if you haven't watched it yet, there will be spoilers.
Yes, actually both of the films, because we're going to ruin them both if you haven't seen them. But we, as you mentioned, have probably, I think this might be a 16th, 17th video. We're not quite at 20 yet, I don't think, on the Why Did I Get Married franchise, but we're getting close. And some of you guys said that you do want to see us break down the actual play. And so that's something that we might
go to the comments and let us know if y'all really want to see us talk about the play. You know, but that makes us the preeminent authority on Why Did I Get Married films.
Second only to Tyler Perry himself. But that is what brought a lot of you all to the channel, and we appreciate you all so much for hanging in there. And there are a couple of you who, whenever you see, the Why Did I Get Married videos, you're disappointed and you say, can we please move on? The short answer to that is probably no, because there are more people who are interested.
Yeah. Right. And how many times we talk about Romeo and Juliet?
A bunch. They're still talking about it.
Exactly. It's been hundreds of years.
So let us talk about, what happened just so that we all can kind of remember, because, you may not have seen the movie lately. All right. So in the first movie, the Why Did I Get Married, that came out in 2007, we have Sheila, who basically has Trina, her close friend, who's been having an affair with her husband, Mike, and it all comes out on this marriage retreat, right? And so after the marriage retreat is done, then we see Sheila left in Colorado where the retreat is taking place, and there's Sheriff Troy. Sheriff Troy, he owns the cabin or this, luxurious cabin, if it's a cabin, where they had their retreat in Colorado.
Corruption.
And he's also the sheriff of the town.
And he owns the country store.
Yes, and he owns the country store in town and all of this other stuff. But once there's the confrontation where Sheila smashes Mike over the head with the bottle and walks out of the retreat, she's in a hotel room by herself, just, rocking, and doesn't know what she's going to do next with her life. No money, no husband.
And Sheriff Troy has a key and he walks in.
Yeah, and he she left the key in the door. And he's like, hey, Sheila, I just came to see if you were okay. I mean, so it would be easy to believe that he was like the knight in shining armor that's coming to save this damsel in distress.
Yeah.
But that isn't how he actually puts himself out there. Although, he does wind up offering her the opportunity to stay.
Yeah. But did he smash in that hotel room?
No.
What?
They didn't smash until later.
How we know?
Well, go to the comments, y'all. Do y'all think that they smashed? I don't think so, because Sheila was still like I don't think he's the type of man who would have taken advantage of her in such a vulnerable
taking
state.
Advantage?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Or it would have been taking advantage, or it just would have been making her feel better.
Yeah,
but
same thing. Did Billy Bob Thornton take advantage of Halle Berry? I don't even know the character's
Monsters
names.
Ball. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, he did.
Yes, he did.
So that's what happens. She winds up staying in Colorado, and they're just friends. But, she's helping him with the store because he gives her a job. So he gives her a place to be, to live, and a job. And so they're continuing. She's totally cut herself off from her friends back home. They don't even know where she is. And so they're talking and everything like that. And, of course, Sheila's a bigger woman. especially toward the beginning of the film. And so, you know, she would be making disparaging comments about herself. And he was like, look, if you got a problem with how you look, then you need to get on that, because he's not going to make disparaging remarks about her like her ex did, right? He treats her completely differently, and she doesn't always know how to handle that, right? And so then eventually what we've been waiting, when she notices him, while she's working, he's got like a tank top or something on, and he's just going on talking about, whatever he's talking about. And it's just overshadowed by her actually noticing his appeal. And then she starts to have this crush and whatever. And then eventually, after they talk and whatever, they wind up kissing one day while they're out at lunch. And so, they done fell for each other. So then after that happens at the end of the year, Patricia's supposed to be getting this big award. She shows up to the award banquet with Sheriff Troy, and they are married with a T at the end of it.
Her friends didn't even know she was married, didn't go to the wedding, nothing.
Because they went on down to the courthouse.
Still,
and so
didn't tell her friends.
She was just like, look, I'm getting this done. So they went on and they got married, and she's lost a significant amount of weight at this point. And so, we see Troy, he comes up and he's talking to the guys there, because this is really his first opportunity interacting with the guys on a level plane. Now, we did talk about how at first Sheila was trying to hook Troy up with Trina, who was the friend that was actually sleeping with Mike before she knew all of this. So his opportunity to date, at the retreat had kind of gone away once it was blown out of the water that Trina had been dating. So that all happens. And so at the end, they're there, and Troy gets to meet with the fellas, and he's like, oh, how'd she lose all that weight? And he was working out, and you know what that means, right? Just working out. They've been working out, doing that aerobics, the bedroom aerobics.
2-minute cardio. That's what I'm calling it from now on.
2-minute cardio. So then the film ends for them and on this wonderful, wonderful note where she's got the man, he loves her, and she loves him, and she's got the man she deserves instead of Mike, who is just terrible.
Want us to cover your favorite movie ASAP? A one-time contribution of just $50 or more to Axiom Amnesia gets you a deep dive on demand, a 30-minute discussion on any film you choose.
It's easy. Step 1, send $50 via our website, axiom.app, where you can pay via card, Apple Pay, or you can pay directly via Cash App at $Axiom Amnesia. See the links below. Step 2, tell us your movie, email, the name you want to appear on screen, and what kind of deep dive you want. General, a specific character, a particular aspect of the film, etc. Step 3, watch your deep dive on demand with your name listed as executive producer.
Lock in your deep dive on demand today and hurry. Spots are limited.
This offer is not valid for filmmakers or distributors. Subject to availability and terms apply. So then we get to the second film. By the time the second film happens, and Troy was married before, because that's an easy thing to overlook. He had been married and he got divorced and whatever. And this conversation happens in the first film when Sheila's trying to drive up that mountain to save her marriage.
Was that before before he inherited all this stuff?
I don't know.
This what he still has is half of what he had.
I think he was probably married before. The reason I say that is because I don't think it had been that long since his father had passed away. Like maybe a couple of years.
Oh, okay.
Somebody who is a real expert, go to the comments. How long had it been since his father passed away? I think maybe he said at the dinner conversation, before it got to the point. I know they had been married 55 years. I think that was 45, 55, something like that. But anyway, so that's when I think his marriage took place. But in the second film, Troy and Sheila have relocated from Colorado to Atlanta, and Troy still doesn't have work yet. And so just to understand exactly what happened, Troy had it good in Colorado, but Sheila just had to go back to Atlanta. And so he makes that sacrifice for her. He presumably sells what they have there and figures out how to make all of this money work money-wise to relocate to Atlanta, but he doesn't have a job. So, they had some assets, but that stuff, if you're living off your savings, man, you could blow through that real quick, right? But So when they on the second marriage retreat in the second movie, you get there, people are aware that their money is getting low and stuff because she's told her friends. And Troy finds this embarrassing because the thing is, they're not his friends. They're her friends. And so he feels very much like an outsider and very much judged, but he still takes it on the chin like a champ. But then when Mike, the ex, shows up at the retreat to spoil it for everybody, this is a problem for Troy because, again, and we talked about this a little bit when we were talking about Cutty. On the same day this video is dropping, there's a video on Dead Presidents where we talk about the character Cutty and Anthony and how Anthony doesn't like Cutty, even though Cutty was taking care of Anthony's child while he was away at the war and stuff. It's this dynamic of the ex, overstepping bounds or the bounds, what you feel are the bounds, and it being a problem. So he is disappointed that they done spent their last to come on this trip and he's got to look Mike in the face. And Mike is a butt. And so he doesn't want to be bothered with that. So then later when they're in the room, she's trying to be...
That's a terrible study. Every time I hear this. They got to spend their last to go on this study for Patricia to do a study and write about it in the book and make a whole bunch of money that she won't even share with her husband. Crazy.
Yes. So then, Troy doesn't want to be affectionate while they're there. He's been out of shape because people know that they don't have money. He's been out of shape because Mike has shown up to ruin the last good trip they might have for a while. And, Sheila's like, you got to tell me what's going on because you ain't been acting like that. And it's making me feel like, so she's feeling like he's going to leave her. And he reassures her. And to me, I think this was something that I think is a very positive thing for his character.
Because, you know what I noticed, though? Mm-hmm. He was wearing that same wife beater that he had on when she was licking her lips and stuff and biting her lip. He had that same wife beater, or the same color at least, when they were on that trip and, when they went upstairs and started arguing.
That's the kind of undershirts he wear, I guess, or whatever. But yeah,
maybe Tyler Perry was trying to be all special, show us this thing like, oh, look at this, juxtaposed with how she fell for him versus, when they're having trouble.
He's trying to, but the thing that I loved is even when he was frustrated, and he was very frustrated with her, and I think he told her straight out, but Sheila was the problem, and later Sheila, the things that caused Sheila in her second marriage, she was causing a lot of issues because she wasn't listening to him. He was like, look, I don't want them in our business like this. I don't want them to know that. And if he told her that and she continues to rope her friends, well, we can borrow the money from them. We can do all of this, right? And so that's really what's happening in the second film. So, but he still reassures her. So in spite of how he feels, he still loves her. But he's just not happy about the situation and he's got a lot of pressure on him. So later in the film, when they get back home from the retreat, Sheila is like, well, I'm going to borrow money from my friends. And he's like, did you understand what I said? No. And she's like, you got to put your pride aside and da-da-da. Let me borrow this money from, Pat or one of the other girls, right? And he was just like, no. And then he says what has really been on his mind. We should have never left Colorado. I should have followed my first mind. And she is like, so basically you saying this is my fault? Well, yes. And it's his fault too, because he agreed to do it, right? But she keeps pressing and he winds up yelling at her like, give me some space, like, dang, back up off me, because he done just came in the door of not getting another job, of having this pressure. And as soon as he comes in, he can't even breathe. You just own him. I don't know how to just do. I solved the problem, girl. And so she had pushed him to the point that he raised his voice. And she was like, don't you ever talk to me like that. So it's positive that she is asserting herself in ways that she didn't with Mike, right? But like, she really needed to check herself in this movie because she didn't. She didn't look at the pressure she was putting on him. She didn't look at how she added to it and her own contributions to the problem. And then from Sheriff Troy's perspective, understanding that he wanted to give everything to this woman, that who he loved, it maybe was just a bad financial decision for the family. And I think that leadership wise, because they had a traditional situation where he's like the leader of the family, I'm the breadwinner, he ain't make her go to work or do nothing like that, right? Then he is responsible for the decisions that are going to be the best thing for the family. And the only reason they said was that she wanted to move something to be closer to her mother to help with the baby. That was it. But now you got a new baby to think about, and your wife and it was a bad move. He just made a mistake, and that happens to people, right? Yeah. So anyway, now we get to this Tyler Perry-esque juicy part of it. And so Sheila still is determined to take things into her own hands. She calls up Mike, meets with Mike behind her husband's back.
Soul food.
Mm-hmm. And is like, can you give my husband a job? Do me this favor, give my husband a job. So he knows the chief of police or whoever and plays golf with him. And so he gets Mike, her ex-husband, gets her current husband, Troy, a job. Troy knows nothing about this.
They had a whole sheriff who couldn't find a job in law enforcement. You could do like these ones in Atlanta who ain't about nothing, who go and start working for the professional teams and stuff. Hint, hint. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are people who were supposed detectives and stuff, and, they live in large. Now, they going off and doing basically private security and stuff. This guy, a whole sheriff, ran a country store, ran a resort, and he can't get a job in law enforcement?
Right.
What in the world, Atlanta?
Because a sheriff is going to have, they have more skills than just law enforcement, right? The sheriff deals in budgets. He's like the CEO of that department. It's more than just being the officer, the head officer. Yeah, and all of that.
He ain't just patrolling and stuff. Yeah. And he had those other businesses too. Mm-hmm. I don't know why he wanted to continue being a cop. He could have done something else, but I guess he just loved this so much.
Yeah, and I mean, it probably was the steady check, the insurance, right?
No, but I'm saying you could go work in another business role.
Once he moved to Atlanta. Yeah, or figure something out. But see, what's happened is this move has caused them to burn through their assets. You sold your house, you sold your actual assets that would have normally been appreciating in value to then start digging into that money that is not even growing.
It was Sheila trying to go flex on her friends.
Well,
because you didn't tell them about getting married, none of all that stuff, right? You just completely silent, living in Colorado. Mm-hmm. You could have just continued doing that.
She didn't want to.
Yeah, she wanted to go show off. So, damn, Sheila.
So that, so she asked Mike to get the job for Troy. Mike goes ahead and does it. Then Mike calls her later and she's like, don't you ever call my house. And she goes snapping off, what kind of woman you think I am? And because I had to ask a favor. And then Mike is like, hey, I need some help. Now at this time it's not revealed, but the bottom line is that Mike has cancer and he needs somebody to help with his chemo. Well, listen, player, you need to pay a nurse.
Yeah, you got it.
But he also still, Mike wanted that old thing back. He started seeing,
he wanted to start beating her again.
He wanted to get everything back. And I think he still thought maybe he had a chance. It wasn't just about his cancer. His cancer diagnosis had caused him to reevaluate his life. And he wanted his wife that, he had given up for his 20%. So one of Troy's coworkers while he's at the job is like, oh, you came highly recommended and we always, kind of wonder how you gonna turn out to be. Mind you, they call him, hey, rookie, and all of that. I'm like, this dude is a whole sheriff, but okay. I mean, I get it's different when you go to a different job and you might be starting at the low end of the rung, but that was just wild.
Yeah, he's a whole sheriff.
And so he came highly recommended. And then they mentioned, oh yeah, the chief say that, you were recommended by this guy, Mike. Now, why this particular person would have all that information in the big old giant city where they were probably living, I don't know. But anyway,
he probably goes golfing with the chief too.
Might. So it was revealed that, and he said that your wife was the one who, asked for the favor. So they did in this one little casual conversation, Troy finds out that Sheila has gone to Mike, asked to get the job. Mike then called in the favor, and this is why he has a job right now. When he was so proud and happy when he got this job, only to now find out that
he should have been happy.
It wasn't on his own.
He could have went to Mike, not him. He could have been like, well, Mike owes it to you to go and ask the chief to hire me. And then he could kick rocks.
Well, then it's that pride, right? Yeah, and then Mike had been messing with him. So Troy's like, hey, you got his address. So Troy's gonna go,
and then he has his address
to
too.
Mike's house.
This one dude, who is
this
he?
one dude had all the info. So Troy goes to Mike's house.
No, this one dude, he wanted this to happen. He probably was trying to get you fired and stuff. He's like, all right, yeah, oh, this happened. Here's the address.
He's
and then
always
you go
talking
over
about
there,
how he was
bam,
a sheriff.
assault charges. Yeah.
So Troy goes to Mike's house to confront him, and he knocks on the door. And then who answers the door but Sheila? When Sheila answered that door and see her husband standing there, she like, ooh, what? He's like, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And he's like, why are you here?
Why was she
trying
there?
to play me for a fool? You could just see him ratcheting up. Lamar Rucker, who plays Troy, he played this. I was like, ooh, he's so mad and hurt.
That's what women like.
No, he was.
No.
Shut up. I wasn't like,
Look,
I'd like this.
I didn't say you. I said women. Look, hit dog holler. Who can...
You're trying to lump us all in. Don't do that. So, but yeah.
No, but why was she there? You could have been working a job. I'm over here working a job and you working a job for this guy for free, being a wife.
Listen, she handled this so wrong. And, so what wound up happening is that he's like, why are you here? And then and Mike is over there laid out on the couch after his chemo. But he just looks like he's napping on the sofa. He snatched him up off that couch and punched him so hard. Then she's like, oh, he has cancer, whatever. He's like, I don't care. And then, Troy storms out or whatever. And he's like, how you do that to me? And he was so hurt. I felt so bad for Troy, but he, leaves and she's all, devastated. And so the conflict though is because Sheila is not open with Troy. First of all, do y'all think Sheila should have asked for Mike to do the job? Like, what do you think, Heit? Like, do you think she should have asked for Mike to get him a job?
If that's the last resort, Tyler Perry made it seem like it was.
I feel like she should have had that conversation with him. Just like, even
But
though
he
he didn't
still
want to
would've
hear
said no.
anything else, if he said no, then that would have been it. That's the decision you decided.
Okay.
That's what you decided. She has a traditional marriage where there's, and it's all religious. The man's supposed to be the head. So if you talk to him and he made the executive decision that I do not want to be asking Mike for a job, then she should have respected that. But she didn't even give him the opportunity.
What if Mike could have given Sheila the number to the chief?
What difference would it have made?
That's what I'm asking.
I don't think it would have made any difference because he don't know. He might know Sheila a little
it's
bit,
still
but
better than
it's better than
it's something that's not.
But it's still
direct.
Mike. I feel you there. But that is better than what actually happened.
Would he accept it? Is the thing.
I think Sheila probably, because presumably
would Troy accept it? If that's the arrangement, I can get the
only
chief's
thing
number.
Troy was going to accept was what he knew about ahead of time, and she didn't talk to him.
Yeah, but he also probably wouldn't accept if he was going to the chief to get him the job.
Yeah, I don't think he was going to accept that.
But
I don't think he would accept it the other way either.
Okay.
What she could have said is, hey, I know the chief, and I have his number, and
yeah, but you saying she have to ask. She would still have to get the number.
Yeah, I think she should. Well, I don't.
That's
okay,
not
so
consulting
here's the thing.
him first.
Here's the thing. If she says I could get his number and call,
then she is not being honest, right?
Then I think because I think he has a right to know if she's got to leverage Mike. That's the biggest problem. That's the issue, is him not knowing, just like you just got to be upfront about what the situation is. And even, okay, so she wasn't upfront about the job. That screwed the pooch and it caused a whole bunch of problems between them. But then when he reveals that he has cancer and he needs chemo, to me, that's when you really got to have a conversation. You really got to have a conversation. But because you've now created, with the man who has been antagonizing your husband, you've created a secret. Because when she goes to him, she's like, I'll tell him before I let you, think I'm about to be played like you calling my house because you think you got me over a barrel. But the thing is, you did that. You did that.
That's the only secret she kept in the movie, right? She was going around talking about how he couldn't find a job and all this other stuff. She only keep a secret of Mike.
That's wild. So yeah, she was wrong. Wrong is two left shoes for that. And it could have now. I don't think. Do y'all think Troy was gonna let her go and take him to chemo? I think she just said, "Listen," because that's what she should have done. She should have said, "Hey, Mike asked me if I could take him to chemo." Now she wouldn't have had to tell if she just said no.
Yeah,
she could have left that.
What if she worked in healthcare?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make a difference? Right, your ex has cancer or needs some attention, some medical
something, yeah,
similar medical attention, right? But I am a nurse who used to work in nursing, but
in oncology,
and he doesn't know, and he doesn't know anyone else personally who worked in healthcare who's available.
Do I think Troy's gonna let her do it?
No, just in general.
I mean, I say I don't care the circumstance. Her lips need to be curling up to tell Troy.
I'm saying if she told, but just in general, not just Troy.
Well, no, I think it's a better case. I think it's a better case to say, I want to leverage the people who I know. And if she was willing to do it, then, because I mean, she ain't really want to do it. But if she was willing to do it, then I think it would have been fine to ask how Troy felt about it. And Troy ain't want it, then, bro, you're going to have to, I can. Now, that's not to say he should dictate everything.
Right. But is it wrong if Troy denies it?
No.
Right? Huh.
No. Not given what has transpired thus far. You come there, you're trying to antagonize, you're approaching his wife to see if you can even have a chance to get that old thing back, even after you did it at the end of the first movie. Hey, Sheila,
right, yeah.
You all over her shoulder. You still in her face in the second movie. You confronted her in the kitchen when you were there. Then on top of that, as soon as you thought you could have an in, then yes, you do have cancer, but you even want to use that to your advantage.
Does that warrant the death penalty? Because that's basically...
Well, if you think the death penalty is going to happen because of the fact that
she's not helping to do the things that otherwise he just lay around, maybe.
Well,
because he doesn't have anyone.
But he can. But he's rich, so he can have a nurse. He can pay a nurse. Money is not an object for somebody who's rides around on yachts and golfs with.
That's all of them.
So except Sheila and Troy.
All
right.
Then,
see,
so we know people who don't got it. Especially after 2008. Listen, he said he survived it. I think when they were on the yacht.
A lot of things are about to happen.
No, he said it was bad. Some people was jumping out windows and stuff like that.
But a lot of things now are about to happen because I know. Of some of the legislations that has just passed in 2025.
I asked that because I think of just because it may feel bad before my ego and all that and my pride and stuff, but it's still a human dealing with a life-threatening situation on the other side. And for me to just be like, no, because of whatever, I think I really need to think about that. So I think
the question is whether or not you're really adding something other than just a basic comfort. Because the reality is most people go home and they take care of themselves and they don't have an oncology nurse, even if that's what she was or something.
Or just a person,
but
right?
Now if we go back to down to the earth in the real world in this movie, Sheila wasn't none of that in the movie. So she's offering nothing different.
I'm not saying that. Yeah, she's not offering anything different than. Right, exactly. But this clearly has to be a person who doesn't have anybody.
Yeah. Now he doesn't.
Ruined all his relationships.
Which is why you got to pay
stuff.
Somebody, right? Which is why you got to pay somebody. If you could pay. I don't know. Maybe he's somehow broke. But, all indications were that he has some money to be able to afford whatever he's affording. And, I would say if it was going to be life or death, absolutely, I would find it in my heart to help. But if it's just like you need a caregiver and I'm not offering anything special, nah. Which is why I say Sheila didn't have no business over there, is my mind. You're not, you ain't no medical professional. You're literally, she said she was driving him to and from. So that's not even needing a medical person. You need a doggone driver.
Okay, yeah.
But
That don't mean you have a driver.
But maybe he couldn't afford. I don't know.
That's my whole point. It's I can't make up every excuse for someone, right?
But what I can do is if I'm not going to do it, I'll be like, but look, I can set you up. Right. Look, I called these places. I found,
right, yeah.
So that's what I'm saying.
But if you came to me and you explain this to me, and I'm gonna be like, he ain't got nobody. All right, well, help the guy.
Yeah. But the point is, it's going to be transparent. That's going to be transparent.
Yeah.
It's not going to be, no, I'm over here trying to, you going to be like, where you going? And I'm like, I just got to run out right quick. Nah.
Yeah, but that's my whole point of saying, oh, Troy isn't wrong for saying no or couldn't be wrong for saying no. Yeah. I think he can be. He
can be if there was nobody else and it was life and death. Yeah, and I just think you should show a kindness, because at the end of the day, Troy just got his feelings. She was the one who was taking blows from this dude. So if she want to go do
that's what that part went into it. It's like, all right, supposedly he's done all these terrible things, but then Tyler Perry always try to throw in the whole Christian aspect of it, right? Mm-hmm. So this is supposed to make her a good Christian woman. That kind of it complicates the story for me, right?
Yeah.
And it simplifies it too, though, right? They'd be like, oh, it's just the right thing for her to do, and then there's no real question or discussions to be had about whether or not what she's doing is right or wrong, because you have to default to that it's right because the books say supposedly that's the right thing to do.
Well, and then you also have to think about, and I'm just kind of trying to think of all the things because I don't want to just be totally down on Sheila, but her being the victim of DV also has conditioned her to behave in certain ways. No, let me just do this. I don't want him to get mad, right? Because we saw points in this film where when he would get upset, when Troy would get upset, she would almost be like, oh my gosh, this is triggering her back into how Mike was.
If she brings it back to Troy, does Troy assess it as that's basically Stockholm syndrome, right? The way that because she's closer, the way that she assesses Mike's situation may be not clear and objective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that, and this is a whole nother reason
but he doesn't have
to
anyone.
Tell your husband, because I think, there are so many things that I could come to you about that are just like more emotional things. And then I say something to you and then you're like, well, and you ask a couple of questions and then I'll be like, oh, this is just, and this could be true maybe for other people, as far as like other types of relationships. It doesn't just have to be husband and wife, but I'm just saying, like, there are things and ways that you assess things that are just not how I would have come at it, that give me a certain level of clarity and direction in making certain decisions that I'm like, oh, okay. And this has nothing, and to be absolutely clear, this ain't about intelligence, right? This is about different approaches. It's about if you are, and sometimes you're too close to it. And that could be true for anybody. There's things you ask me about, and I'm sure I give you a different flavor than what you would have come up with on your own. Like, that is just part of the benefits of, any type of coupling up, right? Is that you really should have the best of all, each of your best qualities should be advantages for both of you. And in this case, she just had to tell him, but she's like, I don't want to, the bigger thing that I think she did wrong in this whole situation is she was trying to solve problems that weren't hers to solve, given the division of the responsibilities in the marriage the way they designed it. That's not for everybody's situation. If you got a 50-50 marriage and it's not traditional and everybody, I'm saying according to who these two people were, that's where she was wrong, because you trying to solve stuff that's his deal. And when you stop trying to solve things that's for him to solve, then it's a lot easier on you, because you're not trying to figure things out and then, oh, well, I can't do that. I got to walk on eggshells. Well, hold on, let me not tell him this and that, and even though your intentions are good, it just creates a lot of confusion that's unnecessary. That's just what I think. But you got to be operating on the basis of the contract, if you will, that you create with your partner, because the marriage is the deal between those two people, and whatever they decided, it could be all kind of things, but you know, we don't know that, but we do know about these characters. And these characters are supposed to be religious and he the head of the household and all of this and that. He's clearly made it, you know, crystal clear. He's the breadwinner. He's all of it. Then let him decide on what should happen with the bread winning. And if you want to get a job, that's your business. But, you know, that's it. I don't think he was going to be like, Sheila, you just need to be barefoot and pregnant. You know, but at the same time, to try to control what he...
Oh, they had a baby, huh?
Yeah, they had a baby.
Yeah, at the time.
So, yeah, like her priorities were just messed up. I think that Sheila... she had a people-pleasing personality, and she just wanted everything to be okay. She wanted to be able to have her hand in all these jars and help and do, and you know, and she just need to be realistic. Look, you got a whole new baby you trying to take care of. You can't be over here driving people back and forth. You can't be over here, you know, being a good wife at the same time and all that. Like, you just...
She was a dual wife.
Shut up. But yeah, that just, and it wasn't fair to Troy. It wasn't fair to Troy because everything I'm trying to figure what Troy, and go to the comments. What did Troy do wrong in between both of these movies?
Troy was perfect, I think. Let me think. I don't know. I can't think of.
Troy didn't do anything. I cannot think of anything.
Leaving Colorado.
That is the only but
he
you
had
know
a little
what?
flaw.
Was it wrong? That was just an error in judgment. It was a wrong decision.
Yeah.
But like, as far as being wrong in the way Sheila and these other folks were wrong, no. Troy was perfect. He was pretty much perfect, which is why he didn't deserve what happened to him, which is why if it's going to be deference to anybody, it should have been to his preferences and what he wanted. For the reason that he was such a wonderful person. But yeah.
How did the second movie end with Troy?
Well, you know, the second movie...
So after they had that confrontation in Mike's apartment, what happens?
What happens is then, you know, what's his name dies.
Gavin.
Gavin dies. Yeah. And then Patricia's like, fix it to everybody. And then suddenly all the problems they have melt away. And then Mike and Troy make up when they have the they have drinks. The drinks or whatever, and you know, so they're able to at least be in the same room together after that. So you know.
So did he keep his job?
I mean, I don't think Troy was that much of a fool.
Okay.
Because it's not like he worked directly for Mike. The person who was carrying out a favor, it wasn't their fault, and I don't think Troy would have done that. What if Troy was like, pack your stuff, Sheila, we going back to Colorado. Pack it now.
Ooh.
But yeah, so it's very difficult because he was such a perfect character and Sheila is flawed in ways that are understandable. But I think one of the lessons is how you let your baggage is carried forward in new relationships, or just how you're changed by the terrible things that may have befallen you that weren't your fault.
But didn't people say that they didn't like Troy in the second film?
Because Troy was becoming about he was blowing up, right? He got pushed to his limits, right?
Yeah.
And he wasn't as docile as he came across in the first one. But this is what I don't understand. In the first movie, I saw Troy as full man masculinity. Why does masculinity have to be like Mike? You know
what you mean?
Like, why does like the way people see it? Because Troy was quiet, he wasn't loud with it, but there was never a time I look and I was like, he ain't a man. And you know what I'm saying? He was clearly a man.
So do some people think that?
I do. I think some
women
people think. I think that there are women who would judge it as maybe being less masculine if you're not loud with it, if you're not, you know, I mean, yeah, I do think there are some women who think that. Not because I've heard them say it, but just when you look at their choices, you know, and people who they would more easily overlook. You were like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You chose that one that ain't even a man. That's going to leave you with them kids. That's who you chose. But this one over here, because he wasn't loud, because he might not have had a Mac game like the other one. You know what I'm saying? He was just what I would call a regular decent old guy, you know? But she didn't even see him because she was just used to that loud masculinity. for those of you who don't know, you should visit axiom.app. And you'll be able to look at all of the recent videos across all of our channels. And I'm putting that on the screen right now just so y'all can see it and see what it looks like. Because there are a ton of videos that are over there. And also, I think that there are at least about 100 exclusive videos that are available for our Patreon members and our YouTube members. So, you know, if you're interested in more of our content, as I've seen many of you binge watching, be sure to check those things out.
So what about Troy being a cop? We have our feelings on cops.
Okay.
But he was probably a cop of a white town. You know,
that's a tough one. Why you
exerting your power over other people?
Well,
like, so when you get to Atlanta, then you got the black cop issues and all that other stuff. And I guess it's kind of the family business too, but still. And is it an elected position in Colorado?
I don't know. That part, so many questions. I feel like he's not a politician. So I don't see him as a politician, and I don't feel like it would be an elected position in Colorado. What I do think is that he's a person who believes in what's good and what's right. We did see in Colorado where when he could have arrested people, he didn't. You know what I'm saying? He witnessed assaults.
Yeah, but that's because he was personally involved at that point. You were around the table having dinner with them at the place you're renting them. Weird. Yeah. Trying to get with one of the women. You know.
He doesn't do that. But what I think Troy showed from the beginning was the idea of what love can look like just when you love humankind, right? The love you just have for another person because they're human and you're a decent human being, right? Like, don't go up that mountain. I'm here to protect you. I'm here to make sure you don't do that. And as a woman, because she was like, I came from wherever, I could drive in some snow, like, girl, you don't even know. But
so
there's
was Troy lonely in Atlanta? So he went over there. Her friends aren't his friends, and he's trying to find a job and all this stuff. He don't know anybody over there, probably, and all he knows is Sheila.
And maybe it was just like he didn't want to be in a big town either, maybe, because the little nestled town in the Colorado mountains is not the same as Atlanta.
And it was probably cheaper there, too.
Money goes further. He's responsible. So, that would probably be bothering him if a lot of money was having to be put out. Like, there are just so many things. But what comes across to me most about his character and why I think he was such a good fit is because he was first and foremost like a protector. And he did that before she was even his woman. That's just in his nature. And then on top of that, when she became his woman, he wasn't going to let nothing happen to Sheila. But he had to know what was going on with Sheila in order to adequately protect her in that way.
So basically, they took a class hit, financial class.
They did, yeah.
Because he was basically running businesses and the sheriff to becoming just a regular officer who that's probably, probably typical middle class.
Yeah.
But the rest of the friends and stuff weren't. Economically.
They were definitely upper middle class.
Yeah.
Solidly. Yeah. And then on top of that, he was just more of a regular guy. He was a regular guy who didn't need all of that fanfare and flashiness. Although he could put on a tux, as we saw, he knew how to fit in enough.
What about Marcus? You think of him as a regular guy?
No, because, he was at one point in his life, right? But then he had the big football career and that became not regular guy anymore. Yeah,
but you mentioned with Troy being not flashy and stuff. Did you see Marcus
okay, yeah, Marcus wasn't. I don't think Marcus was flashy.
Yeah, I think he just happened to be famous from what we see in the movies, right?
Yeah. So, really the only ones who, maybe none of them were super flashy except Mike. Mike definitely came across as flashy.
Yeah, but the other ones don't really come across as normal either.
Mm-hmm.
And
no, it's just
we have our interpretations of what normal is.
Yeah, it's just a different type of black folks.
Regular guy, yeah.
Yeah. You know, but when it comes to Troy, to me, hands down, he's probably my favorite character in the series. My second favorite would be Sheila. But the two of them, definitely my favorite couple.
My favorite is Trina.
Shut up.
I don't know if I have a favorite character though. Maybe Angela.
Why? That would be good to know.
Just because it's the most interesting.
Because she loud and wild.
Yeah, like the other ones, they're very subdued, right?
Very demure. Very
yeah. And it's
she brings a
not a
spice.
lot there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we had the real drama with Troy and Sheila and Patricia and Gavin, really.
In that second movie, yeah. Well, no, in the first, not so much Gavin, but definitely Sheila had a central role in both films.
Yeah. With Mike and then with Troy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. But Angela and Mike really did have a thing going on there, two alike. And, we have a
play
video.
with that from time to time. We definitely do. And y'all get mad, but
I think that was good on Tyler Perry's part. He kind of put a quote bad character, right? One as a male, one as a female.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I'm using it as a noun.
Why must
because
you
we was
trigger
watching something and somebody was like, male and female are adverbs, or when they're really adjectives, but anyway, to describe blah blah blah. And I'm like, so what if you have mixed adults and children?
I said then you're forced to say
boys and
women
girls,
and
women and men.
Women and men.
Yeah, but I could just say males and females. If I say this was a group,
well, you could just say adults
and kids, but no. So the thing was, I wanted to refer to a carload of women and girls, but to point out that they were what seemed like the same gender, right?
You have to say women and girls.
That's why I was just
very
like,
long. You
yeah,
can't
but
say females.
But when I say females, then that I'm specifically referring to that sex, right?
Yeah.
That's important to why I'm saying it. But yeah,
I mean, these are ways that people, like some people.
Give me
make
a word
big
if I
deal.
can't use female or male as a noun. Not you, but just people who think
somebody
that we shouldn't.
in the chat. Like, I just think some people are more or less sensitive about it. It's just like, some people are sensitive about, labeling your race as being black. You know what I'm saying? Like, for me, although I think it's funny sometimes, like when Ice Cube his character was like, that's a female, like I think that's funny.
Yeah.
But it's not something I'm about to, have an issue with a person over.
But if somebody says the blacks,
depend on who says
or blacks, it's just kind of
it like a lot of things depends on who says it.
Yeah, but that's just a little sidebar.
But I can never tire of talking about these characters, and I'm glad that we did take time out to talk about Sheriff Troy because, man, and I mean, I used to watch back in 2007 when the film came out. Like, this is one of those movies I could watch the first one over and over and over again. And I liked seeing that depiction of black love on film. I did. Because he didn't have to say nothing corny. He wasn't like, oh, well, Now, some of the lines delivered in there, where he's talking about like she's kind of like his hero, that was a little over the top for me. Where he was like, I don't know, Sheila, you might be my hero, and that was a little too much for me. But aside from that, he really didn't have to be corny to get his point across. And now, this is a question I do have for y'all. Do you think Troy was interested in her from the jump, from when she walked herself up in that station with the snow on the mountain, talking about she going up there to save her marriage. Do you think that he was interested? Not that he would have intervened, but simply, do you think that he liked her?
He was way too involved.
What you mean? Asking her and telling her about himself?
Yeah, telling her about how her husband ain't shit and stuff like that.
Like, I wouldn't let my wife do.
Way too involved.
But hey, he got a point for that. For me, I was like, okay, I see it. I see how you roll. Why wouldn't that be like thing? But because
he was in his official capacity as sheriff in that moment, right? Now it's getting personal.
Yeah.
But I guess that's what do they call it? Where you're trying to have a good footing with the community.
It's personal when you spend a night. And that's what she had to spend a night in a jail cell. It's
no,
personal.
It's not. No.
But because you kept talking, it becomes personal when we have personal conversations.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. Maybe he was lonely
on the
in Colorado.
job. But still, okay. That's how Diddy was doing to Cassie. As his employee.
Listen.
So think about it. A woman shows up by herself away from home and the sheriff start buttering up, but he ain't good to you. I'm good to my women.
Well, he didn't say that.
Not like that, but that's my interpretation. That's what happened.
He was a friendly guy. But it's like one of those things you bring up, right? You said it's only harassment if she doesn't like it.
Well, she was fragile,
like
so she was already messed up, She
couldn't even see him in that moment, though.
Yeah, but
right?
see, that could be interpreted as taking advantage of.
That's true. And I just think he was I think he was being friendly.
Yeah. But
he was being friendly.
Some friendliness can be inappropriate.
Do y'all think Sheriff Troy we got to take this to was Sheriff Troy inappropriate by the nature and how friendly he was with his conversation with Sheila when they first met at the station when she was driving up that mountain to
I'm kind of being hyperbolic, but that's just, I'm just trying to make a point.
But I mean, I don't know. But it's true. I think that she was so into Mike that she didn't see anybody but him. And when she was sitting there rocking on that bed after he had walked out on her with her friend.
Yeah. But he's planting those seeds that he can
he watered
later.
Them seeds.
Yeah.
And they grew.
Exactly.
Because when she finally saw him and she was like, hold up, and he was up on that ladder and he had his little shirt on or whatever.
He did not look good.
You a man.
I know, I'm just messing with y'all.
Come on now.
Women just like sweat. Okay, so we
look at you, women just like sweat.
Women just like sweat.
Maybe.
But there's this this idea that women like dad bods and stuff like that, and they don't like the super cut cats like Marcus and things. And there's people who do videos now based on that they go around and they ask women what they think of some pictures they show of some men at different, I guess, fitness levels or fat levels. Right? And they never pick the buffest guy, but all the guys think that's what the women want. And Troy, he basically had the regular kind of athletic type of body.
Yeah.
That's my whole point.
Yeah. He was in the middle, right? He wasn't super swole or anything. He was just in the middle. He didn't have a dad bod, but
But he had some sweat on.
Well, I was telling you when you were in there working out, I was like, okay. The sweat on a guy that you are attracted to is not gross the same way it is on a guy that you're not attracted to.
I guess.
Things that are gross when you are not, like even think about like some of the grossest things that people do, like pop each other's pimples or whatever. Like, would you, I know I don't want to do that on nobody except you. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you don't look at it and go, ooh, that's attractive. Two totally different things. Yeah.
I'd be like, let me get
that's
that.
That's the difference. But that's still different. Then she saw his sweat and then she wanted him because of it, basically.
I don't
One of the
know, because
factors.
he
She started licking her lips and stuff.
He
'cause
was
she,
in motion. He was in motion,
With
and he
sweat
happened
on
to be
him.
sweating.
No.
But he was in, he's doing work, which is causing his muscles to flex out a little bit.
He was barely lifting anything.
Y'all,
That boy weak, y'all.
We have started back working out, and me for the first time actually doing some, I don't even know what you would call it. Like, I usually do cardio. Okay. I have actually lifted a dumbbell at this point and begun doing that. And I actually like it more than I thought I would, which is very surprising to me. But yeah, we've started doing that. And when you look at the way the world is changing now, it's never a bad time to try to, get ourselves together a little bit more.
Especially getting old.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh wow, I could do, more than I thought. And don't take it for granted. Things that you can do or that you thought you could do, and hey, do something. Something is better than nothing. Something is better than nothing. But that's our thing. And I was like, oh, I kind of like this. Why? And then I was kicking myself. I was like, why didn't I try this before? Because every time I looked at it, I was like, who would want to do that? I enjoyed like ellipticals, and I loved the treadmill. I, to date, spent hours and hours on the treadmill. At one point, I could be on the treadmill like 2 hours a day. When I was going through doing this kind of, I don't know, a few years ago. I was on there for a long time because I was not running on the treadmill. But now, I'm more open. I have to admit, you did make me be more willing to do that, but it's hard in a fun way. So,
yep,
that's it. But just y'all, we trying to do a little something. Y'all just go sit on the floor and just do some sit-ups. If you can't do no sit-ups, just do something. Move your body. Get your heart rate up at least. Because we don't know what's coming.
So, if you made it this far, type 2-minute cardio in the comments so we'll know you're one of the real ones who stick around to the end.
And be sure to check out the video that's on the screen right now, and also visit axiom.app, where you'll see all of our recent videos in one place where you can click on them and they'll take you here to YouTube where you can watch them.